Hello, and welcome to the inaugural version of Jazz Tales, sponsored and presented by Jazz Alive. Thanks for joining us. My guest this evening for this very first one is a person who I think is very underrated in this business. I think because I can call him my friend and have spent a lot of time playing with him, he's just a phenomenal musician, and I'm so glad he said yes to this. So just a little bit about him. He started playing bass in 1969 and studying with Albert Webster with the National Symphony and William Vaughan also with the National Symphony and the great Keeter Betts on jazz bass. He went to Montgomery College and then went on to American University in Washington, D.C. and the University of Miami in Florida. He's played with the who's who as far as I'm concerned. Phil Woods, Tal Farlow, Al Cohn, Mose Allison, Johnny Hartman, Bud Shank, Zoot Sims, Dexter Gordon, Dizzy Gillespie, Barney Kessel, George Benson, Charlie Byrd, and Herb Ellis. Wow, huh? Yeah. And he's toured with, get this, Jon Hendricks, George Shearing, Rosemary Clooney, Mel Torme, Susan McCorkle, and Conti Condoli. And if that weren't enough, in 1985, Paul was invited to join Tony Bennett, where he spent 20 years. I'm so happy to have my good friend Paul Langosch with me. Paul, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Fred, and I'm so happy to be here. I think this is a wonderful thing that you're putting together for people, and I'm really excited to be part of it.
Great. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you. And let's play.
Okay.
So here's a tune, great standard, called In Your Own Sweet Way. Welcome. One, two, Wave by Antonio Carlos Jobim. And before that was Sweet and Lovely by Gus Anheim, Charles Daniels, and Harry Tobias, composed in 1931. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. It looks like everything. At first, I was scared there because I wasn't seeing anybody showing up. I'll turn up the bass there, Rena. But we're good. Yeah. I'll turn him up more. No problem there. Thank you. As you can see, I've got plenty of people that help along here.
Well, that's nice.
We're kind of practiced at this around here. Good to see you all. Thank you, Dave and Kate up in Lancaster, Rena, and Mike up in Lancaster, Phil and Maureen up in Detroit. Thank you so much. Wasn't that fun? Yeah. Good to see you all. Thank you. Next is hey Steve, good to see you. Next is a tune, Rodgers and Hart, from the 1935 film Mississippi. This is called It's Easy to Remember. It's easy to remember. Thank you. I'm glad. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. We've got sound engineers here too.
Oh,
Paul.
no kidding.
Yeah. My dad's here, so he's like, more bass, much better. Yeah. So everybody seems to think that we've got enough bass. Good. Thank you. All right. So earlier, when Paul got here, we sat down, and this is going to be the first segment of 3 segments of talking about Paul's wonderful career. Enjoy. Paul, I'm so happy that you could join me for this inaugural version of Jazz Tales. As we've talked about numerous times, when I was putting together Jazz Alive, the mission of Jazz Alive is the continuation and preservation of America's indigenous art form. So I think one of the important things is for the young people that we're going to take this music to, and as we've talked about many times, the only way we're going to continue this music is if the young people really, are hearing this music, being exposed to it, being able to play it, so on and so forth. So could you let a young person know, what was that one thing that made you go, yeah, this is it, I want to do music?
Well, I can't really single it down to just one thing. There were many things, but I can just kind of go over a few of the really important ones for me. One was just being around my house, because my father was a piano player, and he used to have people over to have jam sessions in the house. And I remember vividly, I can't even remember exactly how old I was, but no more than 6 or 7, and he was accompanying a singer with a trio at a band shell in, I think it was Miami Park in Dayton, Ohio, and going to see that. And just what I loved was the interaction of the musicians, and not just the playing, but just how they felt. And you could just feel that joy for a young person like that. It was really extraordinary, and it just really made me feel good, and I wanted that feeling again. And then music was always in our house, and I was always studying one instrument or another. And when we came to Washington, that's where I took up the bass. And it was through the school band at Whittier Woods Elementary School in Bethesda that I actually started playing bass. And there was just a lot of music in the county schools, especially in that area. There were a lot of people that played instruments. And when I went into 7th grade, I started playing in the junior high school orchestra, and we had a full orchestra, and we rehearsed first period every day, 5 days a week. And, we started getting pretty good, and it became more and more fun to play. So once again, it was that interaction with other people. Now I was interacting with people my age and developing friendships, and I'm still friends with a lot of those people from those days.
Wow.
But I remember the seminal night when I really decided that jazz is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, was going to see Chick Corea with the first Return to Forever band with Bill Connors, Stanley Clark, and Lenny White at the Cellar Door in Washington, and it was right before the album Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy came out. And my father actually let a friend of mine who was a few years older than me borrow his car so we could drive down to the Cellar Door and go to see that show. We went to the first show on Friday night, ended up paying again to see the second show, and then went back Saturday night and did the same thing. So we saw all 4 shows at the Cellar Door, and that was it. I was hooked. I mean, I had never heard anything like that, and it was just like mind-blowing. And that was really the seminal turning point in my life.
Wow. So a couple questions. You said that you were playing several instruments, just trying different things out.
I really wanted to play drums when I was younger, and so I started taking drum lessons. And that was the thing that my parents always insisted on, was that my brother and I, if we wanted to learn an instrument, that we took private lessons. They didn't, we could bring an instrument home and experiment on it, but if we were going to play it, they wanted us to have, proper instruction. So I played drums for a few years and then kind of got bored with that, and I really wanted to play guitar, but my parents insisted that I take piano lessons for a year before I played guitar. So I did that, and then I got a guitar and I started playing guitar, and I was very lucky to have a teacher named Marion Ganges, who was a freelance jazz guitar player around Dayton, Ohio. She used to play gigs with my father, and she was actually pretty well known in jazz circles and sort of had a renaissance towards the end of her life. And she was just a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And I think if we had stayed in Dayton, I probably would have stayed on guitar.
Wow.
But then we moved from Dayton to Bethesda, Maryland in 1968, and that's where I started.
So having played those other instruments, that really piqued your interest to
Yeah,
be able
yeah,
to
I think they all really, built on one another, especially the guitar, because Marion was teaching me chord structure, like just very basic stuff. I mean, I was by no means like getting, heavily into jazz on guitar, but she really insisted that I learn how to read and learn how to read chords. And when I think back on those lessons now, I could tell that she was steering me towards being a jazz guitar player, and that I was getting those fundamentals.
Oh, wow. Wow. So then by the time you decided jazz is it, bass is it, you kind of had some foundation that just made you go, yep, here.
Although it happened in reverse. I decided bass was it first.
No.
And because I started playing bass and I started taking lessons from somebody in the National Symphony, Albert Webster of the National Symphony, who was a terrific teacher. And my first aspiration was really to become a section player in a symphony orchestra. But then I started playing with my friends. We started experimenting with jazz. I got into a band. And that's when I went to see Chick Corea, and that was like...
The rest was, the rest
that was it.
Wow, that's really, really cool. Well, I think we should play another tune.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about your mentors on the next segment.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah,
Boy,
Fred.
it's been such a long time.
It has.
So great playing with you again. Yeah. So here's a blast from the past. She says hello. Charlotte Monroe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I haven't seen Charlotte in a long time. Good to see
Well,
you.
Art was another very important mentor in my life.
I'm sure. Yeah. Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Here is a tune. I have to look at my list here. What are we doing? Oh, Hindsight. Yes.
Oh,
This is a Cedar Walton tune we haven't played in a while, so here we go. Hindsight by Cedar Walton. One, two, Hindsight by Cedar Walton. Here's the second part of my interview with Paul. So I see in your bio that when you went to, and I mentioned it earlier when I introduced you, is that you went to Montgomery College.
That's
and
right.
That you were able to study with the wonderful musician, educator, and you considered him to be your mentor.
Yes.
And that's the great Bill Potts.
Yes.
I said something in my noontime show that I do about what all Bill had done, including his claim to fame of writing Big Swing Face for Buddies, but he wrote so many other things too.
Oh, yeah.
But what, and I even mentioned when I played the one tune about you and Robert and Chuck and Paul being youngsters
Right.
in that band, and what a great band. So why was Bill such a mentor to you?
Well, Bill had not been at the college for very long. I think he was in his second or third year when I started attending. And we did not get off to a great start because I had really, really long hair and I looked probably like I was really into the Grateful Dead. And Bill, I mean, he had a lot of patience in a lot of ways, but in other ways, like, he didn't really have a lot of patience for pop music and especially rock and roll. He was, but anyway, that's a whole different thing that you could talk about. But so I had very long hair, and I was in his improvisation class when I first started at Montgomery College. And the first 2 weeks that we had the class, I didn't get to play at all. There were a lot of, like 3 or 4 bass players, and a couple of them were pretty good. And so as I was walking out of the rehearsal room after the second class, the guy who had advised me about my music classes, Dr. Ernie Wolfley, who was the chairman of the department that particular year, but he was co-chairman or assistant chairman most of the other time, he asked me if I'd gotten to play, and I said, well, no. He said, but it's okay, I'm learning a lot just sitting there, which was true. I was really learning a lot just watching these other guys play. And apparently then he said something to Bill, because that class met Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So Wednesday, when I got into class, Bill came over and I could see that he was mad, and he said to me, so you want to play? Well, you're going to play everything today. You're going to play the whole class. And so, I did, and I was not, believe me, I was really, really in my infancy, but I had taken some lessons with Keter Betts, and I'd played with my father, and I basically was starting to get the idea of how to construct a walking line. And I'd been sitting there for 2 weeks listening to all these tunes. So I did okay. And as I was putting my bass away after the class, Bill came over and he apologized to me. And he said, I'm really sorry, you sound great. And said, something to the effect of, I just didn't like the way you looked. But Bill was, and I don't think Bill really expected this because he had never taught before. And he hadn't even been hired by Montgomery College to teach. His official job was recording all the student recitals and concerts, because when he was in the Army, his job was recording concerts of the various military bands.
Oh, wow.
And that's how he had access to that recording equipment when he recorded those records of Lester Young in the 50s at Olivia Davis's Patio Lounge.
Right.
So that stuff had been kind of borrowed from the Army. So Bill ended up, I think, really loving to be around young people. And he was so hands-on. It wasn't, he didn't just have us listen to Count Basie records. When Count Basie was in town, he took us to see him. And then we got to go backstage and meet, these people that we were just watching, and these amazing musicians. And it just really introduced me and the other people that were going to school there at the time, that were sort of his gang. We all just had these incredible hands-on kind of experiences that then, gave us the introductions. And, for instance, Bill was the one who introduced me to Phil Woods. And Phil was doing a week-long summer clinic, which I played in. And Phil was such a nice guy and was such a great teacher and a great clinician and everything. And that was one of the really, really great weeks of my life. And so from that point on, whenever Phil would come to town, even if Bill wasn't there, I was. But, I'd usually go with Bill, but I would go see that band. So, Phil remembered me, and I got to go all the time, and I developed a relationship with him. And then he introduced me to his bass player, who became a very good friend of mine, and his drummer, Bill Goodwin. Steve Gilmore was the bassist.
Right.
So it was a way to just get to know these people on a personal level. I wasn't nearly good enough to play with them yet, but, they really appreciated that we would come and that we would, spend the money and take the time and come and hang out with them. And I think that's one of the things that's really missing now in our musical world is young people don't have a chance to really build those kind of relationships. Now, there are other ways that they're doing it, and it's mostly through teaching in clinics and stuff like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it felt so much more natural. And, and also it was in their natural habitat at a club, on a bandstand, playing their music. So they were really comfortable with that, and it just, made everybody get along.
Wow. So just because you were all in the college band and you were good enough that Bill said, come play with my professional band and do these gigs? Or how did that happen?
I'm honestly not really sure, because he did ask, and part of it had to do with, he got a band together partially because some of the military people, Kenny Smuckle, Tim Bowen, Dave Steinmeier,
right.
People like that, Rick Lillard, and people like that. Sort of, Bill was kind of having a rough time. I don't really think I should go into that. It's not my business. But they helped him through a crisis period. And they really stood by him, and they really helped him get through this, which he did. And sort of his reward for going through this was, we'll form a band. And so we started playing every Monday night at this place called Frankie Condon's in Rockville.
Right.
And Bill asked me to play bass. And, he could have asked anybody in town, and they would have said yes, I'm sure. But he asked me, and so now all of a sudden, and I was getting better. But when I started playing with a band like that, I got a lot better. Because if you want to get better, go out and play with people that are better than you are.
Right.
And, that'll do it every time.
Wow. So how old were you when you did the first record with him?
Oh, well, the record didn't come along till later. The 555 Feet High.
That was the first one with that band?
Well, that was the only one with that band as far as I know.
Yeah, there were a couple other records, but you're not right. I didn't look at the,
Yeah, I know he did another record where they recorded all the Porgy and Bess stuff that he'd written.
Right. And that wasn't that band?
No, that was all West Coast All-Stars.
Ah.
And I think they made a documentary about that too, but I've never seen it.
Oh, wow, I need to look at that.
But that wasn't done until the mid-'80s, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it was still most of the original people from that band.
Sure.
And when that band started, Robert Redd was only like 13 or 14 years old, so he wasn't ready to play. He was a trumpet player, and so when he first started playing on the band, he was playing in the trumpet section. And he didn't start playing piano until much later. And Chuck was kind of the drummer from the beginning, as I was sort of the bass player from the beginning.
Wow, what a great experience.
Oh, it was unbelievable.
Wow.
It was just unbelievable.
Well, I think we should play a little bit more,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about Tony in the next segment. Yeah, Paul. Yeah. Peter, good to see you. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And Rena, I'm glad you enjoy it. Herb, that was a tune, the one you were talking about is Hindsight by Cedar Walton. Here's another Cedar Walton tune. This one is called Ojos de Rojo. One, two, Here's the final segment of my interview with Paul, and we talk about Tony. Enjoy. So they say that in the music business, sometimes it's the only way, that just being in the right place at the right time. So for our young folks that are coming up through, is that a true statement?
Well, I think it is, but it's also not quite that simple. Being in the right place at the right time was definitely how I got the job with Tony, because it was literally 2 days before the first concert that I ended up playing with him. So I know if I hadn't been there, to get in touch with them right away, they would have, they probably had other calls out to other people who just hadn't gone back to them. So I got, but once again, it was through a personal relationship, and it happened to be with one of the great unsung heroes of the music business, a guy named Don Thompson out of Toronto.
Oh, yes.
Who is really one of the greatest jazz musicians that has ever lived, a multi-instrumentalist. He plays absolutely amazing bass, absolutely amazing piano, amazing vibraphone, and I've heard that he can really get his way around on the trombone and guitar. Oh, and he plays drums too, because I played a couple gigs with him on drums.
So can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
Can we tell the Mel story about Don Thompson? Or is that one on the cruise ship? Where he gets
no, that's fine. Oh, okay.
So I told you, folks, he's got plenty of stories, and this is a good one. So let's tell this one, and we'll go back to Tony in a second.
We did this cruise that Mel hired me for, and I was playing with Mel and his trio, which at the time was Mike Renzi and Donnie Osborne and myself. And Mel was doing a lot of work with George Shearing at the same time, and George Shearing happened to be on the cruise as well. So he also had Don Thompson with him. So this was the jazz cruise when it was on the Norway. And it was just, just an amazing time. It was also, Zoot Sims was on that weekend. It was the last time I saw Zoot. And he really didn't look good. But anyway, there was always, the people played their assigned concerts or club dates or whatever. And then it would just always evolve into a big jam session in the main lounge of the ship. And so, Mel would come and Don would come, and Don was playing vibes, and then he was playing drums, and then he was playing piano, then he was playing bass. And then Mel got really inspired, and he started playing drums, which he was a very good drummer.
Right, yeah.
And he actually, his first job in the music business was Mel Torme played drums for the Chico Marx Band.
Wow.
And Barney Kessel was his roommate.
Wow.
So anyway, so Mel started coming and sitting in, and then Mel would be like, he'd be playing drums, and then he'd like be doing scat singing and, trading fours with Zoot Sims, with Mel scatting and Zoot playing saxophone. So there was all this stuff, and and then Don just sort of kept surprising everybody by picking up another instrument. And so Don got up one morning, and there was a envelope that had been slipped under his cabin door, and it was on Norway stationery. And he opened it up, and he unfolded it, and it was a picture of a knife in somebody's hand with blood coming off the end of it. And it said, "Sing and you're a dead man."
It's such a great story. But, I've seen him play piano live. I've seen him play bass live. I haven't seen him do vibes. But, he's such a phenomenal musician.
Oh, and a great writer, and also a great educator.
Right,
he
right.
was at the Banff Institute for years.
Right. So back to Tony. We only have a few minutes here yet left. So it was kind of the right place at the right time.
It was, but I wouldn't, if I hadn't have had that connection with Torme, and then it was the same thing. Every time that George Shearing and Don were in town, I was there, like every night. And Don and I actually became very close friends. My wife was from Toronto, and so we became friends with Don and his wife. And so it was a personal relationship that started by my going to see him, and also, just really worshiping the way that he played. But if it hadn't been for Don, and then the confluence of events, which I won't go into because it would take too long, but it was just one of those things where it was kind of like,
Stars aligned.
yeah, exactly. The stars lined up, and I got the call, and I was able to,
Wow.
get out there and do it.
Wow. So networking and really kind of getting out there so that people
Yeah.
know that you're serious about the music.
Well,
Not
I think
just from
that's the
playing,
best
but
way.
listening,
Yes.
and soaking it all in.
And going and being there in person, that tells an artist that you're committed.
Right, right.
Being there really lets them know, and they appreciate it. They appreciate the support a lot more than I think people realize. And I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's George Benson, who's selling out a 3,000-seat concert venue, or whether it's somebody who's just playing at a little club or anything. They appreciate it just as much when people are in the audience.
Wow, wow. So one more story maybe about Tony.
Okay. Well, let's see. Oh boy, there's so many.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a bunch of them from you too, but I don't want to put you on the spot here. But I just thought if there was one more story, or any story, maybe it doesn't even need to be about Tony's, something inspiring and as part of the mission of Jazz Alive. If you were to talk to a young person, what would you say as far as the music business goes? And
Well, I mean, as far as Tony goes, this isn't really a specific story, but one of the things that I always really admired about Tony was the way that he really believed in what he did, and it caused him a lot of pain, and he lost a lot of money, and his career almost came to an end, but he hung in, and because he just wanted to sing what he wanted to sing. And by doing that and just really believing in the Great American Songbook, he was able to really bring his career back and also bring a lot of attention to that, because all these other there have been a lot of people who've recorded albums of standards because of Tony.
right.
And I think I think Linda Ronstadt was really one of the first real pop people to cross over and sing an album of standards, and I loved that album. I think she's a great singer.
Yep.
I think one of the well, okay, I just remembered a story. We were playing in there was a huge concert hall in Orange County, and we were playing there, and it was Sunday afternoon concert. The place was completely packed, and it was, I don't know what they called them, but it was kind of an auditorium where they didn't have a center aisle. You had to enter on just the sides.
Yeah.
So, if you wanted to get up, it was quite disruptive to other people. So we're playing, and I'm just happen to be looking out in the audience, and I see this guy get up. And you see him make his way over, and other people are standing up and everything. And he gets to the aisle, and he starts coming down, and I'm watching him, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy is coming to get on stage. And he comes in, and he goes up, I see him go through the door to the backstage, and nobody stops him, none of the ushers or anybody. We didn't really have much security, but there must have been a security person there, but nobody stops him. And he walks up, and all of a sudden this guy comes walking out on stage, and it was Joey Bishop.
Wow.
And Tony had no idea he was there, and no idea he was going to. And Joey Bishop was not really all there, so it was just such an awkward moment, because he came out and he tried to be funny and and he sort of just kept stumbling over his words. And I almost felt so sorry for Tony, because he wanted to try to be nice to him, because Joey Bishop was a great entertainer in his day, but obviously
Wow. That's a funny
Oh,
story.
yeah. Well, and he came back 2 other times to the
Wow.
concert.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you for all your stories, Paul. I think we should play a couple more tunes
Okay.
before we
Oh,
close
I'd love
up the
to.
show.
I'd
But
love
thank
to.
you so much. Before we play our last number, I have a few people I'd like to thank. First of all, I'd like to thank my piano tuner, Rob Bangert. He came over this afternoon, and I mean, as you all know that have been with me in the afternoon, you know that I'm pretty picky about that whole thing. And so he came over, and he tweaked it even better than it's ever been. So Rob, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And next, we'd like to thank Janet and Lou Russo of Nutley, New Jersey. They donated Stream Pass to an aspiring young artist. In fact, for the next 3 shows, they've donated a pass to an aspiring artist. And the one that they donated today went to Ben Chase, an aspiring musician and audio engineer currently studying at Virginia Tech, pursuing a Bachelor's of Arts in Music Technology and Music Performance degree. Thanks so much, Janet, Lou. I love you guys. Thank you so much. If you'd like to sponsor a student, we've got plenty of folks that I know just from my own experience, let alone the board of directors for Jazz Alive. We've got plenty of students and we can fill those spots. So if you'd like to donate, please go to jazz-alive.org and get in touch with us, and we'll hook you up on how to make that all happen. Thanks again, Janet. We will really appreciate it. We're going to play one more number for you before we leave. This is a tune by Chick Corea called Humpty Dumpty. Thanks for joining us, folks. I really appreciate it. Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So next week, I have Michael Bowie with us. And I'll be starting, if you tune into the noontime show, I'll be playing a bunch of stuff from him. So if you haven't checked out jazz-alive.org, please go to the website, find out what all we're doing, sign up for the mailing list, donations, all of that. Please tell everybody about us. As I told folks that tune in the afternoon, this is the way we're going to get Jazz Alive really, really going, and I really appreciate it. Ben signed in and he says, thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Ben, for tuning in. Appreciate it. Folks, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. I hope to see you tomorrow at noon as well. Thank you.